It's difficult to know where to begin when you're asked to present a tribute to someone as unique as Lynda Jayne Campbell. Those big blue eyes, her caring smile, that infectious laugh, all memorable trademarks of our friend and colleague who was taken from us before we even had the chance to say goodbye. I'm Ronan Kelly, and in this special programme, we remember Lynda Jayne, the girl next door.
Well, I was born in Coleraine, which is not exactly near the sea, but I spent most of my time at Castle Rock, which is just outside Coleraine. And Portrush and Portstewart, remember, were just round the corner. So it was no big deal for me to go there to do anything. And I rarely did go to Portrush or Portstewart. Instead, we would tend to get in the car and drive to the likes of Newcastle and County Down. Or indeed, Omeath used to be a great favourite place to go as well. But it was always, there had to be sea around. I mean, what I'm sure anybody will remember, going into the sea, being freezing, coming out and getting that good old rub down with a towel, and your mum saying, "Are you all right?" and get all wrapped up and all the rest of it. We were freezing, but we sure enjoyed it.
Lynda Jayne's broadcasting career began with Ulster Television, where she worked as a continuity announcer during the 70s. But it was in 1978 that she took the brave step to leave television and venture into radio. A different job, a different world, and a world that was soon to become her oyster. Downtown Radio's head of programming, John Rossborough, recalls the early days of the presenter, who often described herself as being wide-eyed and bushy-tailed.
So many words could be used to describe her personality. She was vivacious, bubbly, intelligent, very intelligent, and just someone who, when she came into a room, you knew somebody special had just walked in to join you.
Radio 2930. Jayne, come on, Lynda Jayne.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to Come On Over. Just after 28 minutes now before 10
She was
o'clock.
someone that everyone knew to see because of her work on television. So when she walked in, it was like a friend had already arrived to work with us. And she very quickly became part and parcel of everything that downtown was.
For Lynda, radio was a real baptism of fire.
The very first weekend I worked at Downtown, my programme controller came to me and said, "I want you to go to Dublin on Saturday." And I said, "But I have plans for the weekend." And he said, "Tough, you're going to Dublin." So as I was the new girl, I thought I'd better. So why do you want me to go to Dublin? He said, "You have a 3 o'clock appointment with Lauren Bacall." And I nearly passed out because I think that is big stardom. I'd always admired her as an actress, and I had very much admired her husband, Humphrey Bogart. So off I trundled to Dublin for my 3 o'clock appointment with Lauren Bacall, went to the suite in her hotel. She only gave 3 interviews in Ireland, and I was the only one from Northern Ireland. So I was taken into the suite with my trusty tape recorder beside me, terrified, sat down on a beautiful big settee and started to ask her the questions, and she was magic. We had a wonderful, wonderful interview, and I said thank you very much at the end and looked down to turn off my tape recorder. And yes, you've guessed it, I hadn't turned it on. So being a real big, brave radio presenter, I burst into tears. I said, "My dear, what's wrong?" And I said, "I didn't turn on my tape recorder." And do you know what she said? "Don't worry about it, my dear. We'll have a small gin and tonic and we'll do it all over again." And we did.
I have raised 3 children, a lot by myself. I've made many decisions.
Did you decide to write this book on your own, or did someone approach you? Was it something you wanted to do?
Well, actually, it was something that I didn't think I would ever do. But I was asked to do it at a time in my life that I really was kind of at loose ends.
I was with her for over an hour, and I'll always treasure that memory. Sad things happen sometimes, happy things happen. On the happy front, I have been very lucky to travel as a result of the radio, and have broadcast from other parts of the world. Some of them very happy, as in broadcasting from Disney in California and in Paris. Some a little more traumatic in going to the likes of Africa with Concern Worldwide. But it's such a wide spectrum, it really gives you lots of experience. Funny things happen at the radio station. In the early days, I lived in Belfast at that time and was never very good at getting up early in the morning. And on one occasion, or maybe 2, I was a little late for my broadcast. But I knew I had a stalwart here who would stand in for me. And she indeed was Pamela Ballantyne. And Pamela did my programme for 45 minutes till I arrived. My father didn't know that it wasn't me. Most importantly, neither did my boss.
Down through the years, Lynda developed a great rapport with her weekday audience. She also developed a special relationship with a fellow broadcaster, Big T, Trevor Campbell. They got married in 1983. A tireless worker for many leading charities, Lynda was always there to lend her professional support. But after 19 years behind the microphone, she then announced that she was leaving Downtown to concentrate on a new business venture with Trevor, running a hotel on the County Down coast. But her love of music was always there, and following the untimely death of our colleague John Greer, Lynda Jayne returned to Downtown to present John's popular Sunday evening programme, Keep It Country.
Hello, good evening and welcome. It's coming up to 11 minutes past 7. It's Sunday night and that means it's Keep It Country from now through till 10 o'clock. Hi, I'm Lynda Jayne and looking forward to playing you lots of good country music between now and 10.
At the time, everyone, including Lynda, knew that Greer Madeir, as he was called, would be a very hard act to follow. But Lynda turned on the charm, and it wasn't long before, once again, she had captured the hearts of the Downtown listeners with her unique style of presentation and an active interest in the local country music scene. Success was hers, but sadly not for long. News of her sudden death stunned all of us who heard it.
I think, like everyone, it just was something that I heard the words, but I just could not accept that those words meant what they said. I had a call from Big T just before 6 o'clock on Thursday, which immediately told me that something was wrong because T would normally be in the station at that time preparing his country show. And when he first started talking in a very broken voiced kind of way, I just knew the news was going to be bad. And since Trevor was telling me, or about to tell me bad news, it had to be about Lynda. And like everyone who heard, my heart sank. And in fact, when the telephone call was over, and I put the phone down, I just sat at my desk, put my head in my hands, and just thought for minutes before I went anywhere to try and take it in.
The public responded to the news. The media were inundated with telephone calls from shocked colleagues and listeners. Messages of condolence were sent via email from as far away as Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. The reality of it all was reflected on the front pages of the daily newspapers and in television and radio programmes. Easter Sunday was unlike any other holiday for Downtown's Ken Bruce. Just 3 days after Lynda's death, he was asked to step in and present her programme Keep It Country.
We had lots of callers. The phones didn't stop ringing from around about 6:30 until after we went off air at 10. But the thing about it was that I could actually, in my mind's eye, see Lynda sitting in the studio. A colleague came into the studio when I was on air and she said, you know, I can smell Lynda's perfume. And I had borrowed CDs that Lynda was going to play on the programme last night, and her perfume were on those CDs. And of course, all the good memories about Lynda come back again. It was very, very difficult.
The following day, Lynda Jayne's funeral took place at Moneyray Non-Subscribing Presbyterian Church in County Down. It was a very moving service. During it, her family and friends heard Michael Henderson, better known as Hendy, pay tribute to his former colleague. In describing Lynda Jayne's love of life, he said that unfortunately the candle that burns brightest rarely lasts longest. What followed was an emotional response from Trevor, who spoke from the heart about his love for Lynda Jayne. And according to his wishes, their favourite song was played as Lynda's coffin was carried from the church.
You must remember this, a kiss is just a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh.
After Lynda Jayne was laid to rest, many of her friends and colleagues spoke of their loss, among them Mike Edgar of the BBC.
I think I was possibly one of the last people privileged to have chatted to Lynda. Thursday afternoon, Ronan, about 4:30, 5:15, Lynda phoned me to have a chinwag because we were asking Lynda to sit in for Hugo and play some country music for a couple of weeks when Hugo was going to be away in Nashville. And she just loved her country music, and I just said, she said, "Hello, Mike, it's Lynda here," and I knew who it was straight away. And she was a really breath of fresh air every time she was, on the phone. And I said, "I wonder, could I entice you back into the BBC studios?" And she said, "You don't have to ask me twice." I said, "Fantastic." And I said, "What, Liz?" I said, "Well, it's country music, even better." She said, "For goodness sake, you know what I do on a Sunday night?" And I said, "No, very well. What you do on a Sunday night, you do it so well. That's why we're trying to poach you and get you into the studio." After I left the office, I'd worked on until about 7, and I was driving home and turned the radio on and heard the news, and I must admit it felt almost like an out-of-body experience. It was just so tragic, and such a lovely woman, such a beautiful woman, such a great broadcaster, all-round entertainer, and it just is a huge loss, both to the broadcasting community and indeed to Northern Ireland en masse, with such just a familiar voice and such a lovable person.
Father Brian Darcy recalled his last meeting with Lynda and Trevor.
I phoned her up about 6 weeks ago. Said we were doing a program on this new digital channel about difficulties and trying to get over difficulties in marriage and how did they cope. And herself and Trevor came on, and they were absolutely brilliant. I didn't know it was going to be her last television appearance, and neither did she. And we had a lovely night afterwards. And then I went down to her. She was having a tribute night in the Le Mans Hotel. And I went down and we had a most magnificent night with her parents. We stayed all night. And that's my lasting memory of somebody who suddenly had made it back from a great difficult period in her life, had bounced back, not only bounced back, but was actually on a bigger curve than she'd ever been. And it's so typical of what Lynda was and is in her life. And I just hope that she'll help Trevor to overcome what for him is the biggest curve he's going to ever have to face.
Among the many stars from the local country music scene who came to pay their respects were two young singers, Barbara Allen and Warren Smith, who Lynda Jayne had worked closely with during Robert Adair's Country Music Ireland roadshows.
When the Country Music Ireland shows started going out on the road, Lynda was the compere, and as you say, I spent a lot of time with her, and I couldn't get over how professional she was. She tied the whole show together, and I found out one night just how difficult that was, because Lynda and Trevor were heading off on holiday, it's sort of a last minute holiday, and she asked me to stand in for her as compere, and that really let me see what a difficult job it was and how easy she made it look.
Warren, you were supposed to be on last Sunday night's programme with Lynda.
I was indeed. It's been a major blow, Lynda and myself and the boys in the band, we got on so well together, doing a series of road shows throughout Northern Ireland, and she was looking so much forward to Sunday night, and so was I. We talked about the new tracks that were coming up for Easter Sunday, and it really is today. It's been a real reflection of her life. She was so bubbly and so happy-go-lucky and so helpful to up-and-coming artists like myself, and it's a major blow from that point of view that we just have lost a dear friend. But if there was one song that I know Trevor and Lynda held very dearly, and Trevor made a comment in the church today that really struck a chord with me, and that is, "If tomorrow never comes, would she know how much I loved her?" And I know that was a song both he and her held very dear to the heart. So I think if there was one song that I had to pick out, that would be the one that Trevor certainly would want to remember by.
Sometimes late at night, just what you're thinking of, if tomorrow never comes.
During Lynda's time at UTV, she worked closely with John O'Hara, who was instrumental in her early television training. This reading from John is for Trevor, in memory of Lynda.
Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. Whatever we were to each, that we are still. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way you always used. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effort. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolutely unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of your mind? Because I am out of your sight. I am but waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well. Nothing is past, nothing is lost. One brief moment, and all will be as it was before, only better, infinitely happier, and forever.
John O'Hara. Among Lynda Jayne's other broadcasting friends who attended the funeral were Clark, Frank Mitchell and Kate Smith. Kate started her broadcasting career with Lynda in downtown, and they also shared a flat together in Belfast.
When I think back on the flat now, I think of Lynda breezing in with a huge bag of shopping and a bottle of wine. Come on, let's have dinner. And it was like she could just light up the place as soon as she arrived. And she was desperately generous and expected the same in return. And some of my friends here were laughing about a famous story we had about this little white Angora jumper, which was my pride and joy, which I just bought. And I didn't have a lot of money and wasn't buying a lot of clothes in those days. And I was saving it for good. And I was about a size 8 to 10, and Lynda was, let's say, a wee bit bigger. And the morning I was going to Dublin, and I'd been saving this jumper for the trip, I went to the cupboard to get the jumper. No jumper. Lynda was gone in the jumper to Castle Rock Caravan Park. The story went down in history. But at the same time, Lynda would have given me the shirt off her back, literally. She was such a generous and full of life person. She was wonderful, and I miss her terribly, although I wouldn't have seen her an awful lot on a day-to-day basis. It's a terrible loss, and I'm desperately sad about this.
I felt very strongly whenever Lynda Jayne died, because I was in the newsroom at UTV, and somebody said, "Did you hear Lynda Jayne's dead?" And I said, "What?" Couldn't believe it. And then I heard the Radio Ulster News at 8 o'clock, and it was mentioned then. And, you know, the feeling it really came to me was, it was like a member of your own family dying. You know, broadcasters are a small community in Northern Ireland. It doesn't matter who you work for, whether it's BBC, Downtown, Cool FM, UTV, or RTE for that matter. And it was almost like somebody in your own family dying. I mean, the double tragedy was that she was 45. Nobody expects, she's younger than me, and you don't expect anybody to die at that age. But it was just that dreadful feeling of loss that, you know, in Northern Ireland, we are a small community anyway, but broadcasters are a small community, a small family within themselves. And this is just like a member of the family dying.
I always remember the welcome she gave people, and I always remember being a broadcaster and looking up to her. I remember listening to her on the radio when I was working on community radio in Dundalk and listening to Lynda on Downtown, and she was the person you wanted to be. That's the sort of professional she was. You looked up to her, you admired her, and you felt you were going into the presence of a total professional when you first met her and first got the opportunity to work for her.
Well, two people who couldn't be at the funeral were country singing stars Daniel O'Donnell and Sandy Kelly, and they join me on the line now. Daniel, what was your reaction when you heard the news?
Well, I think like most people, it was kind of disbelief. It was like, well, it must be a mistake, or maybe it's somebody else. You know, it's so hard to take it in that it could be, you know, Lynda Jayne. It's, you know, I suppose she's one of these people that you think is going to be there forever, and certainly her death is so untimely. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
What are your earliest memories of Lynda?
Well, when I was starting out, I mean, I used to go in and we would do interviews with Lynda in the studio, you know, and I suppose she always made me feel very comfortable, you know, and very much at ease, because she talked to you. And, like, I wouldn't have been used to interviews all that much. So she talked to you like if you were talking without microphones, you know, that kind of way. And then, I mean, I would have met her numerous times away from the studio too. And she was just such great fun. And you know, I suppose she had that great laugh that I'm sure many people remember her for. You know, that it's just, I mean, I don't really know what to say. Do you know that kind of way? I don't know what to say, you know, to Trevor and to her family, her parents and everybody, because, you know, there's nothing anybody can say to take away the pain and the sense of loss that they must be feeling. You know, there's nothing anybody can do or say.
Sandy, what was your reaction to the sad and tragic news about Lynda Jayne?
Just total denial in the beginning. I just thought it was a mistake or thought it wasn't true, because as everybody knows, she was so vibrant and so full of life. And the thing you would think is that she'd be taken away at such an early age. And then when I started to believe it, I just cried for a long time. I loved Lynda Jayne. She was very much a woman's woman. And I think she reminded me a lot of Patsy Cline insofar as she walked her talk. She was very real. And anything she had to say, she said it. And she did my first interview, Ronan, when I came to Belfast back in '86, when I had Baby Don't Go in the charts. And I remember she made me feel very important. And every time she interviewed me, she made me feel like she was really interested in the questions and really interested in the answers. And that's not always the case, you know. Last time I saw her was at the Opera House in Belfast. Herself and Trevor came to see our Patsy Cline show, and we spent about a half an hour laughing and joking and talking about clothes. We had a mutual interest in fancy jackets, and she wanted to know where I bought a particular jacket I had on. And I was exchanging addresses of shops and things like that. She was so full of life. I still can't hardly believe that she's gone.
Lynda had a great interest in the Irish country music scene. This has got to be a huge loss for the industry here.
Absolutely. I think once we all get over the shock and the missing her, and, you know, I feel so bad for Trevor because I know, you know, what a great loss to him, my God. But when you get over all of that and you start thinking about it in that context, it'll be a huge loss because, as I say, she was one of the, you know, few people who really gave us airtime and gave us credibility, and, as I say, just made us feel important. And she realized, I think, that country music was music of the people, and she tried to spread that through her program. And I don't know who's going to continue that. I don't know.
George Jones of BBC Radio Ulster described her as the people's presenter. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's definitely a very, very good way to remember Lynda, you know, that she was the people's presenter.
Very sad loss for us all, Sandy.
Absolutely. But as a human being, as a person, I just loved her like she was my sister. We didn't see each other that often, but she was forever in my thoughts, and we exchanged cards and the odd phone call. I will miss her forever, and my deepest sympathy to her family, and especially to Trevor, who's a wonderful man too.
For me, Lynda will always be that ray of light that she was on the first day that we met and in the years that followed. It really was my privilege to work with such a professional yet down-to-earth person, and I know that things will never be the same without her. For me, Lynda Jayne was the girl next door. So we bring to an end this special tribute with the thoughts of a close friend who Lynda Jayne respected so much, George Hamilton IV, who now joins us from his home in Tennessee. George, how did you feel when you heard the news?
Well, first of all, Ronan, it was shock, great shock, because kind of like in the words of Bob Dylan's wonderful song, I always thought of Lynda Jayne as forever young. She was so vital and alive and so youthful, and it just seemed way too early to lose her.
What do you remember about meeting Lynda Jayne?
Well, back in the late 70s and the early 80s, I had the privilege of doing a country TV series from Belfast, Make Mine Country, with George Hewardine, the producer. Philomena Begley and I were co-hosting that. And for some reason, they seemed to always do the videotaping in December. We did it for 2 or 3 years there running, and I was always in Belfast at Christmas time in December, just before Christmas. And I remember Lynda Jayne and Trevor inviting me over to their home for Christmas festivities. I guess they were sensitive to the fact that I was thousands of miles from my home here in Tennessee, and I was in Northern Ireland at a time when most people are with their families. So they used to invite me over every December when we were doing those programs to visit in their home and have an early Christmas dinner and meet with their friends. And I remember us sitting around the living room singing Christmas carols on many occasions, usually country Christmas carols.
George, you spoke to Big T shortly after Lynda's death, and I'm sure, like most people, you found it difficult to just pick the right words.
Yes, I did. It's hard to think of the right words at a time like this. Words seem so small and insignificant. But I was reminded as a Christian that for Lynda Jayne, it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And, of course, we just came through the Easter season, and the message of Easter is that because of what happened on Calvary so long ago, we have hope. We will meet again. And I told Trevor on the phone that I was thinking about Winston Churchill's funeral. I'm told that at his funeral, which he planned himself, and he selected all of the songs and the scriptures, at the end of the service in St. Paul's Cathedral, a trumpet played taps, which of course is always played at the close of the day, the ending of a day. But then as soon as that finished, another trumpet from the other end of St. Paul's played Reveille, the wake-up call. And the message of that, apparently, was that Mr. Churchill wanted everyone at his funeral to know that for him, it was the close of one day and the beginning of another. And that's the way I like to think of Lynda Jayne. She's started her new life upstairs, and we will see her again. I'm sure of that.
How will you always remember Lynda?
I remember as vital, personable, warm. My feeling was that she wasn't starring in her own movie. You know what I mean? She wasn't self-obsessed. She loved people. Most of all, she loved Trevor. But she made time for other people, and she was always an encourager. There's a fellow in the Bible called Barnabas, who I'm told his name meant encourager. And that's what she was to me. She was always encouraging everybody, especially the musicians and artists that she came across in her work. She was not on any kind of an ego trip. She was always boosting other people and singing their praises on the radio and playing their music. And I just think it's a great loss because she was a giving, loving person, and there's no one like her. There'll never be another one.
George, is there one of your songs that you'd like to dedicate to Lynda?
Well, I did a song. I recorded a song in one of our albums recently called "We Will Meet Again." It's in a gospel album called High Country. If you can find it, I think it's appropriate because it's the way I feel about Lynda Jayne. And it was written by George Hamilton V, our son. It's called "We Will Meet Again."